The rain fell hard against the cracked windows of a small apartment on the east side of the city. Inside, Rachel Carter, a single mother of two, folded laundry at the kitchen table, while her 6-year-old son colored on the floor. Her daughter sat nearby, finishing homework under the dim kitchen light. Rachel was tired. She worked 2 jobs, one at a diner, another cleaning offices at night, and still barely made rent. Every month felt like a race against the clock. But she always paid, even if it meant skipping sleep or dinner. At 6:30 p.m., there was a knock at the door. 3 sharp taps. Official. Cold. Rachel froze, then wiped her hands and opened it. Standing there was Philip Reynolds, her landlord. Late 40s, expensive coat, umbrella dripping rain onto the hallway floor. Behind him stood one of his assistants, holding a clipboard. "Miss Carter," Philip said without a greeting. "We need to talk." Rachel's stomach tightened. "Is something wrong?" Philip sighed dramatically, glancing around the small apartment, like the peeling paint offended him. "Your rent payment was late again last month, and according to my accountant, this place is overdue for renovation. We'll be increasing the rent by 15%. Rachel's voice trembled. 15? Mr. Reynolds, I'm already barely managing. He raised a hand. Not my concern. If you can't afford it, there are others who can. You have 30 days to vacate. Her heart dropped. Please, she said, her voice cracking. My kids go to school nearby. I'll find a way to catch up. I just need a little more time. Philip looked unmoved. I've already filed the notice. He glanced at his watch. You should start packing. The assistant slipped an envelope into Rachel's shaking hands. A formal eviction notice. She watched them leave through the rain, her son clutching her leg. She tried to smile at him, but tears blurred her eyes. That night, when the children were asleep, Rachel sat alone at the kitchen table. The eviction letter lay beside a stack of unpaid bills. She whispered to herself, I'll find a way. I always do. And she did. Over the next few months, Rachel worked harder than ever. She took extra shifts, joined a free business training program through her church, and started baking, something she'd always been good at, selling pies and bread at local farmers markets. People loved her recipes. Within weeks, her small side hustle became something bigger. By winter, she'd rented a small storefront downtown and opened Rachel's Hearth, a cozy bakery that smelled like cinnamon and hope. Customers lined up every morning. Local news featured her story. Single mom bakes her way to success. And then one morning, 3 months later, a man in a wrinkled suit walked in, holding a folder and looking desperate. His tie was crooked, his eyes tired. It was Philip Reynolds. Rachel froze when she saw him. He didn't recognize her at first. Hi, he said awkwardly, clearing his throat. I saw the sign outside. You're hiring. I was wondering if you still needed staff. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Philip shifted uncomfortably. I lost a few properties. Bad investments, market downturn. I just need something steady. I can do cleaning, maintenance, anything. Rachel stared at him, remembering the day he'd stood in her doorway with that eviction notice, the rain dripping off his umbrella. Then she smiled, calm, steady, graceful. We are hiring, she said. Have a seat, Mr. Reynolds. Let's talk about the position. He blinked, finally recognizing her. His face turned pale. Miss Carter. Rachel nodded gently. It's Mrs. Carter now. And yes, I remember you. For a long, quiet moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of the espresso machine hissed in the background, and a line of customers shuffled near the counter, unaware of the strange twist of fate unfolding at the corner table. Rachel motioned toward a seat. Please sit, she said evenly, her voice calm but carrying weight. Philip hesitated, then lowered himself into the chair. He looked smaller than she remembered, his once proud posture gone, his suit wrinkled at the collar. Rachel folded her hands on the table. So, she said softly, you're looking for work. He nodded, eyes down. Yes, I made some bad calls. Real estate took a hit. The properties I owned, most of them are gone. I'm just trying to get back on my feet. Rachel watched him quietly, her face unreadable. Do you know what it's like, she began slowly, to pack your children's clothes into boxes because someone gave you 30 days to leave? He swallowed hard. I didn't mean... She raised a hand gently. No, Mr. Reynolds. You meant it. You made it very clear. You told me to start packing. He lowered his gaze, guilt flickering across his face. I was wrong. Yes, she said softly. You were. The silence stretched. Then Rachel leaned back and sighed. You know, when you handed me that notice, I promised myself I'd never beg again. I worked every hour I could. I started baking in my kitchen after the kids went to sleep. Now I own this place. She gestured around, the warm light, the steady hum of happy customers, the smell of fresh bread. Every inch of this was built from the ground up. Philip nodded weakly. I read about you in the paper. I didn't realize that the woman you threw out could build something better, she said, not cruelly but honestly. He met her eyes. That the woman I threw out had more strength than I did. Rachel studied him. For the first time, she saw something different. Not the arrogance from before, but shame, exhaustion, humility. Maybe even a little regret. She reached for an application form from the counter and set it in front of him. We do need help. It's minimum wage, hard work, early mornings, no shortcuts. He stared at the paper, then at her. You'd really hire me? Rachel nodded. Everyone deserves a chance to start over. He blinked, emotion tightening his throat. Thank you. You don't know what this means. Oh, I do, she said softly. It means you get to find out how it feels to earn something instead of take it. He nodded, signing the paper with shaking hands. As he handed it back, Rachel smiled faintly. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just peaceful. Welcome to Rachel's hearth, Mr. Reynolds. We start early. Be here at 6. He nodded again, humbled. I'll be here. When he left, Rachel leaned against the counter and exhaled. She hadn't humiliated him. She hadn't even raised her voice. She'd done something far stronger. She'd shown him grace, and that, she realized, was real power. Not revenge, but rising above it. By the following Monday, Philip Reynolds stood behind the counter of Rachel's hearth, wearing a plain apron that still smelled faintly of yeast and coffee. It had been years since he'd done anything that resembled labor. His hands, once accustomed to signing documents and holding wine glasses, now fumbled with trays and coffee cups. Table 3 needs a refill, called Janine, one of the younger employees. She was cheerful but firm, the kind of worker who didn't care who you used to be. And don't forget the scones in the oven. If you burn them again, Rachel will have your head. Philip forced a laugh, wiping his forehead. Yes, ma'am, he said, already moving toward the oven. Rachel watched quietly from the register. She'd seen his type before. Men who thought money was power and people were disposable. But this one, he was changing. She could tell. The arrogance had burned away, leaving something raw and real. The first week was rough. He spilled coffee, mixed up orders, even dropped an entire tray once. But he never complained. Every mistake was followed by a quiet, sorry, won't happen again, and a determined attempt to do better. One morning, Rachel came in early to find Philip already there, sweeping the floor. You're here before me, she said, surprised. He looked up, smiling faintly. Old habits. I figured if I can't own anything anymore, I can at least take care of what belongs to someone who earned it. Rachel paused, watching him work. There was no bitterness in his tone, just humility. She nodded. That's a good attitude. He hesitated before asking, How are your kids? They're good, she said, softening. We're finally stable. They love helping in the shop on weekends. This place, it gave them their mom back. Philip nodded, eyes distant. I used to think success meant never struggling. But I see now. It's the struggle that makes it real. Rachel smiled faintly. Life has a way of teaching us what money can't. Over the next few months, Philip became a fixture at the bakery. Customers liked him. He was polite, patient, and funny when he relaxed. Sometimes people from his old life walked in without recognizing him. And when they did, their reactions were almost comical. One of his former business partners once ordered a coffee, did a double take, and whispered, Philip, is that you? Philip just smiled. Yes. And for the first time in years, I actually like my job. Rachel overheard that and couldn't help but grin. One evening, after closing, she found him counting the day's earnings. You've come a long way, she said. He looked up, a quiet pride in his eyes. You gave me a chance when I didn't deserve one. I'll never forget that. She tilted her head. I didn't do it for you. I did it because my kids were watching. I wanted them to see that forgiveness can build more than anger ever will. He smiled slowly. Then I guess we both learned something. Rachel nodded. We did. You learned humility. I learned peace. As the lights dimmed and the smell of bread lingered in the air, they stood there. Two people once divided by pride and power, now bound by respect. And in that quiet moment, Rachel realized something she hadn't before. Losing her home hadn't broken her. It had built her. And for Philip, losing his fortune had finally given him something money never could: a conscience. Months passed, and Rachel's hearth became more than just a bakery. It became a symbol of second chances. The smell of cinnamon rolls and freshly brewed coffee filled the air every morning. But it wasn't just the food that drew people in. It was the feeling. People came because they felt something genuine there, a warmth that couldn't be bought or faked. Rachel stood by the front counter one bright spring morning, flipping the closed sign to open. Philip was already inside, polishing the display glass. He worked with quiet focus now, moving like a man who had found purpose. Morning, Mr. Reynolds, Rachel said playfully. He smiled. You can drop the Mr. I think I've retired that title. She chuckled. Fair enough. He straightened a tray of croissants. We're almost out of the lemon tarts again. Should I prep another batch? Rachel paused, impressed. You've been paying attention. I've been learning, he said simply. From the best, Rachel smiled. If you keep this up, I might actually let you handle the register next week. He froze, pretending to look terrified. Me? With money? That's how I got into trouble in the first place. They both laughed, the kind of easy, genuine laughter that comes from shared history and understanding. Around mid-morning, a local reporter came in, a woman from the City Gazette. She was writing a follow-up piece about successful local businesses. She'd done the first article on Rachel months ago, back when the bakery had just opened. Rachel Carter, the reporter greeted warmly. Or should I say, the heart behind the hearth. You've built quite a story here. Rachel smiled modestly. Just hard work and faith, I guess. The reporter glanced at Philip, who was serving coffee to customers. And your team seems loyal. How did you find such dedicated staff? Rachel hesitated, then looked at Philip and said, Sometimes the best people find you when you least expect it. Philip met her eyes from across the room and smiled, a quiet, grateful smile. The next week, the article ran with the headline, From Eviction to Empowerment, the woman who built a bakery and gave her former landlord a second chance. The story went viral online. People flooded the bakery to meet the kind-hearted woman who forgave the man who evicted her. Rachel received letters, flowers, and even offers from investors to expand her brand. But she didn't let it change her. She still worked the register every morning, still kneaded dough with her kids on weekends, still opened the door for every customer with the same words, Welcome to Rachel's Hearth, where everyone's got a place. One quiet evening after closing, Philip lingered by the window as the last light faded. You know, he said, you didn't just give me a job. You gave me my dignity back. Rachel turned, wiping her hands on her apron. You earned it yourself. I just gave you space to try. He nodded, smiling softly. I used to think owning things made me powerful. Turns out, power isn't owning, and it's helping. Rachel smiled back. Now you sound like someone who belongs here. As she turned off the lights, the little bakery glowed softly under the street lamps. The sign on the window reflected faintly in the glass. Rachel's Hearth, baked with love. And for both of them, that light meant something more than success. It meant forgiveness, growth, redemption. The kind of wealth no eviction, no loss, and no pride could ever take away. A year later, the once small bakery on the corner had grown into something much bigger. Rachel's Hearth now had 3 locations across the city, each one filled with the same warmth, the same smell of cinnamon, and the same quiet spirit that made people feel at home. But success hadn't changed Rachel. She still arrived before sunrise, tied her apron, and worked alongside her team. Philip, now in charge of operations, had transformed too. Gone was the cold, distant landlord. In his place stood a man, humbled by experience, devoted to service, and respected by everyone. The staff called him Mr. P, half jokingly, because he refused to let anyone treat him like a boss. One morning, as the team prepared for the bakery's one-year anniversary celebration, Rachel gathered everyone near the counter. "I've got something special for you all," she said with a warm smile. The room buzzed with curiosity. Rachel turned to Philip first. "A year ago, you walked in here looking for work," she began softly. "You said you'd do anything, cleaning, lifting, whatever it took. What you didn't know was that you'd end up helping me build something bigger than a business." Philip blinked, trying not to show emotion. "Rachel," she held up a hand, "you taught this team what grace looks like, what it means to own your mistakes and rise from them. And that's why I'm proud to announce," she pulled an envelope from behind the counter and handed it to him, "that you're officially a partner in Rachel's Hearth." The room fell silent for a second before erupting into applause. Philip stared at the envelope, stunned. You can't be serious." "I am," Rachel said with a grin. "You've earned this. You believed in the vision when it was just a dream, and you made sure everyone who walked through that door felt welcome, even when the world hadn't always done the same for you." Philip looked down, his eyes misting. "Rachel, I don't have the words. I don't deserve—" She smiled gently. "That's the point, Philip. None of us start out deserving grace, but we can grow into it." He nodded slowly, tears welling up, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you." The celebration that followed was simple: cake, laughter, and the sound of clinking coffee cups. Rachel's kids ran around with balloons, the staff danced between tables, and customers joined in with congratulations. Later, when the crowd thinned out, Rachel and Philip stepped outside to breathe the cool evening air. The bakery lights glowed behind them, reflected in the window like a beacon. Philip looked up at the sign, "Rachel's Hearth, baked with love." "You know," he said, "when I evicted you, I thought I was taking something away. Turns out, I was just clearing space for what you were meant to build." Rachel smiled softly. "Life has a way of flipping the story when you least expect it." He nodded. "You gave me a second chance. I'll never waste it." She looked out at the street, the city alive and buzzing with new possibilities. "That's all any of us can do," she said quietly. "Use what we've been given and pass it on." As the wind carried the smell of baked bread into the night, Rachel slipped her hands into her apron pockets and smiled. She had once been evicted, broken, and unseen. But now, she was proof that kindness wasn't weakness. It was strength in disguise. And the man who had once turned her away now stood beside her, not as her boss or her burden, but as her partner. Together, they had built something stronger than walls or wealth. They had built a place where grace lived in every loaf, and redemption rose like bread in the oven.